I'm Tia,
And I'm Toni.
and this is Emotions Unscripted. Whew, so, how has your week been?
My week has been pretty smooth. I've just been kind of just trying to be present, doing a lot of yard work, pulling up weeds. What about you? Have you
It's good. I was looking recently at the weather, and I see that we have a cold front coming in next week, my birthday weekend, and so I'm like super excited about that because it's like it's gonna be like highs of 83, and I know some people are like, "That's not a cold front." It's a cold front when we've had 100 plus temperatures for like the past 2 months, so I'm super excited about that and being able to kind of just cool off because like it's been I feel like that right now it's been hot physically, but then I think that in my TikTok world it's been very like emotionally heated also, and I think a lot of it has to do with like men and the way that they're reacting, and and so I was thinking today about me being able to come at situations from a very neutral standpoint versus letting all the things that like I think and I experience and I see about men like come into play because I was like I can eat men alive. Like I could chew them up, spit them out. I could make them cry. And I remember I used to always tell guys like when I was younger, whenever they like was messing with me or saying things, funny, and I'd be like, I'm like, are you sure you want to mess with me? And they were like, keep on picking, keep on picking. And I was like, I will make you cry. I will make you cry. And I think about that in like the emotions that they have suppressed and pushed down. And I was like, I know how to get to those. And I will make you cry and you will hate me. And that's the goal. but um, and so when I think about being a therapist and having to come to things as that neutral self, it's like how do i how do I balance myself and not allow all of the things that I hear and I see to kind of continue to cloud or put this black cloud over men, because in reality I know what they're dealing with. I raised two boys, and so I know what the messaging that they're getting and how they are being programmed and what they're going through in those struggles. And I was like, I don't want to be one of those people who add to like the downfall of men. I want to make sure that I'm doing my part with what I know to be able to help them. And of course I always think about like I had a good daddy. I don't have daddy issues, and so there's no reason why I should take a perspective that you know, to just bash men all the time. I was like, because I know that there are good ones out there, and I know that I'm trying to raise good ones. And I think about one of the things that whenever I look at my two girls versus my two boys, my two girls are like these strong, independent women. They're like hustlers. They take charge. They manage their money. They do those things because I always wanted to make sure that they had the skill sets to be able to do those things and take care of themselves. And so, um, my oldest daughter more so than my youngest daughter, masculine energy just like me, like we are bosses. And so I think the little one, she'll come around, we'll get her up there to be a boss. um, but then I remember like when I had boys, I was like, I don't want my boys to be boys who can't express themselves, who don't understand their emotions, who just bottle everything up. I want them to be able to understand like what they're going through, and I want them to feel comfortable with being able to kind of express their emotions. And I always remember one of the things I would tell my boys all the time is like, and I would tell all of the kids, but especially the boys, I would make them like identify what their feelings were. I would tell them that, it's okay to ask for help. I would give them those like positive words of like affirmation to let them know that they're doing a good job, because I was like, I want them to recognize and connect with emotions. I don't want them to be, these hard men. I don't want them to, walk through the world trying to push everything down when when you push everything down, it comes up in a very nasty way. And so I always went to like, okay, if I don't do anything else, I'm going to make sure I'm not sending explosive men out into the world. And so that's where I've been lately is in that space of managing. I'm so mad at men. They're getting on my freaking nerves. They need to get their life together. Like, and wait a minute, I got these boys over here. And and what I can do is make sure I'm not sending, you know, damaged goods out into the world.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring up a good point. With all that suppressed emotion and anger and it coming out in very unhealthy ways, it's just men being unhealed and them not being nurtured and them emotionally being starved. And think about what that does to them when they come from these um, lacking emotions and that nurturing from a child to men.
Hmm.
They're going to crave it in unhealthy ways.
Yeah. It makes me think about, and I don't know if you remember, we had this conversation not too long ago, but I was reading this book and it was talking about how we all have both masculine and feminine energy, but what has happened, especially in Western society, that we see is that that feminine energy within men has been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and so what happens is that those all those emotions, all that caring, all that loving nature has been suppressed. And it's like they're battling to kind of keep it down. So even when it starts to kind of come up, they start pushing it down. It just makes them angry because they can't control it, because they can't control it, but they're trying so hard and they kind of just explode with anger because that feminine part of them that the society is saying they shouldn't have is starting to raise to the top. And with women, of course, we get the same thing of, oh, you need to be more feminine. You need to knock out that masculine energy. But I think women a long time ago said, screw that. We're gonna create this balance between, this masculine and feminine energy. Now, do you still have some women who are working on their healing journey and they're trying to suppress that masculine energy? Yes, but I don't see it as much as you do with the men suppressing of that feminine energy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so important for boys to be nurtured because boys turn into men. And I feel like with all of these limiting beliefs and these stigmas that are put on boys, that follows them into being a man. And it's like you want them not only to be credible and bring home the bacon, right, in a sense, but you want them to be able to know how to nurture themselves and love themselves and take care of themselves. And, like you said, feel that they're enough and ask for help. And I guess overall, just knowing how to be vulnerable. I think that's really the missing link, being vulnerable and knowing how to nurture themselves.
Yeah. But of course, they have to have like that permission. They have to have that space to be vulnerable. And I can say, and I'll acknowledge it, that a lot of times us women interfere with them having that space. And I think about my boys in general. So even though I raise them to be more emotional, it still drives me crazy that they're emotional. And so it's like, what are you crying about? And I just want to punch them in their chest because they won't stop crying about something. But I was like, Tia, that's exactly what you wanted, is for them to be able to express these emotions. But at the same time, it's annoying me. And my messaging, my programming is also the same of men don't cry. You need to man up, those types of things. And so they're probably getting these mixed messages of like, from me of we want you to be vulnerable, but we also want you to be this. And it's like, who teaches them how to be vulnerable, but also, also be have that masculine energy too? Who teaches them that balance?
Yeah, for sure. And it makes me think about the first person that they fall in love with, which is essentially their mother.
Mhm.
That I think that mother-son relationship is really important too, with teaching them that vulnerability and nurturing and those skills. But I think a lot of times, like you said, they're taught to be strong and be a leader. But it's like leaders need self-care too.
Mhm. That makes me think, I was watching this video and it was talking about that same kind of concept of like the importance of the mother. And it's like, you know, some men, if they had a good mother, that their mother was the first and last person to ever say that they were proud of them. And so they don't get that constant, like, I'm so proud of you, thank you for doing this, you're doing such a great job. They don't get all those words of affirmation that they need in order to feel like, oh, thanks. I was watching this other one, and it was a comedian, and he was talking about how he had said out loud, or he had recorded or something, um, after he like passed the test. He was like, he had recorded or said out loud, I'm proud of you, because he wanted to hear from a man, from a male's voice, that somebody was proud of him. And so he had to give that to himself. And I think a lot of the things that men need, they're having to give to themselves. But then there was really no examples of how to give it to themselves. And so they're doing things that are supposed to make them feel better and make them feel worthy. So things, even like, you see men with like, oh, let me, increase my body count, things like that, because that's gonna make me feel like a man. And it was like, no, you just need somebody to like say, I'm proud of you.
Of course, of course. And I think everyone wants to be nurtured in different ways. I think the fact that a lot of men don't know how they want to be nurtured, they don't even explore what
Hmm.
that looks like. So it's like if you've seen your dad in the man cave drinking beer, watching TV, it's like, oh, that's my self care. But just because the things that you've seen, it doesn't mean it's like the most healthiest pattern to continue.
Yeah. And even like, I think about one of the things that we hear women talk about in terms of self care. It's like, I'm gonna go get a pedicure, I'm gonna go get my nails done, I'm gonna go get a massage. And a lot of men will be like, I'm never gonna let somebody else rub on my feet. What do I look like getting my nails done? I don't want anybody rubbing on me like that, you know? And so they feminize a lot of the things that could be, really good self-care for them, because like you said, they only had the example of my dad sitting in the garage drinking a beer as self-care. But we all know that's not self-care, and that's probably suppression of emotions with the alcohol, versus being able to kind of just really relax and allow somebody to take care of you.
Yeah, and I think it's just simple things. It makes me think about the other day I went and got my daughter like some skincare products, and my son was like, "Oh, what is that?" And in my head, I kind of battled like, "Am I supposed to get him facial stuff too?" But then I'm like, "It's hygiene. Like
Hmm.
everybody wants to have clean skin. Now maybe his hygiene stuff isn't as detailed as hers, but I went and got him a little set of stuff and taught him how to properly clean his face because it's important for him to have good hygiene. I even think with that, men probably lack with hygiene and like taking care of themselves because people probably only taught them the bare minimum.
Hmm. And I think a lot of times, like, smelling good is associated with women. Men are supposed to be all burly and masculine and stink and things like that. And women are supposed to be delicate and soft and smell good. And so something as simple as, I don't want to smell like a girl. Because I remember that was one of the things, because I would get all my Bath and Body Works lotion, and then I forget to buy some non-scented lotion. And my son was like, I don't want to smell like a girl. And I was like, but it's good lotion, it's thick. And I was like, you sure you don't want any of this? And so even having to think about, like, when you're buying products for men, luckily Bath and Body Works now has a really good line of men care products. This is not an advertisement, but they have a really good line. And so my son will go in there and buy his deodorant and buy his body sprays and his body washes and stuff like that. And he smells really good when he actually takes a shower now. Mhm. And so one of the things I also think about is, I remember seeing this video, and it was this guy. I don't know his name. I think he's a popular creator or something, but he was walking around Home Depot giving men flowers, and the guys were like, wait, what is this for? And like, the little note had said that, men usually don't receive flowers until they die. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then I thought about myself, like, have I ever gotten a guy flowers? No. But when I think about my boys, I've never gotten them flowers. I've never been a big flower person, anyways. But I've gotten them stuffed animals, like for like Easter and Valentine's Day. I would get them a stuffed animal. I would get them a little heart box of chocolate, those types of things. And so it wouldn't be, oh, this is the girls' holiday. My boys also got those things too. But of course, I'm sitting here thinking, I need to buy my kids some flowers.
I love that. I do the same thing with my kiddos too. And of course, try to make it gender appropriate, but everyone is celebrated, regardless if you're a boy or a girl. I think I saw a TikTok the other day and a little boy was crying and was like, why are girls so much more celebrated than boys? And I felt so bad
Hmm.
because if you think about it, girls are kind of celebrated more than little boys. And then it's like, what is that telling our boys? And then the boys turn into men. So those words of affirmation are so important with building their confidence and their self-esteem and them feeling like they have a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
But you just made me think about like why are women more celebrated? And I was thinking, I wonder if it has to do with what they expect or they think that we can actually do versus what they expect or think men can actually do. And so I remember my parents, we were all of us were good students, all of us made great grades. And so but we didn't get like money for A's. And so I had friends who would get money for A's. And I remember my dad saying, he was like, why would I reward you for something you're supposed to be doing anyways? And so I always think about that. And I was like, now I'm like, that was mean. But I think the same thing happens with men. It's like, well, you were supposed to get that job. Oh, you were supposed to get that promotion. You were supposed to finish that education. You were supposed to make this amount of money. You were supposed to buy that car. You were supposed to do all of these things. So we're not going to pat you on the back for doing things that you're supposed to be doing. But because of how they view women and women are stupid and behind and blah, 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 we're putting this like, oh, you got that job? Oh, you got that promotion? Oh, you were able to buy that car by yourself? And so it becomes like, let's celebrate that because that's so uncommon for that to happen. But with men, it's like, no, you're expected of that. And so we're not going to celebrate you.
Yeah, and it just really puts a very unrealistic expectation on men,
Mm-hmm.
because every man is different. But I feel like there's this standard, and if you're not reaching the standard of being a quote unquote man, then you're less than. And I think that's why men have such troubles with their mental health, suicide, depression, all of those things, just because they're not celebrated and they're suppressing their emotions.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me also think of like in addition to like the celebration is also how they're not they're not desired in the same way that women are. We, like I said, we be male bashing, and it's like men don't necessarily feel the love, and even things like I hear with like in relationships in terms of like intimacy, and it's like the man's always initiating, and the man will be like, I want to be, desired. I want you to initiate things with me too, but our roles say no, you're supposed to do this, and so they never get that feeling of being desired. And I'm like, I can't even imagine like going through life and like nobody desiring me. I would feel really crappy.
It's crazy because the other day, me and my husband were talking, and he was saying that women don't experience the amount of rejection that men experience. Like, men are rejected all day, every day, if you think about it, because men are the one courting women
Hmm.
since teenagers, and they get so many no's. But for women, it's like we can go to the grocery store and get hit on like 5 times, and it's like nothing to us.
Hmm.
So I just wonder like how that impacts their self-esteem and how they feel about themselves.
Hmm. But it also makes me think about how we see like that intense love bombing. So the men are starved of this emotion, and so when somebody actually says yes, it's like, I want to marry you, you're the best thing ever, and they start becoming this like crazy obsessive person. And with that, we like, what's wrong with you? But it's like, okay, maybe it's cute. And but once the woman starts to kind of give into them a little bit, stroke their ego a little bit, make them feel loved, and they're not starved for the emotions as much, they switch back into their natural selves. And it's like, well, who are you now? You're mean. But it was like before, you were getting that because they needed it so bad, they were starved of that emotion, so now they just dumped all of this on you.
Mhm.
And as soon as you were able to kind of fulfill some of those desires and those needs, they were able to kind of retreat back into like the person that they originally are. And so that's why you always got to have to be careful about that love bombing, because like you don't know what's coming after it. It could be okay. I'm not going to say it's always bad, but then other times it's hiding what is really there.
Mhm.
And what is really there is an emotionally immature, emotionally starved man.
Yeah, it makes me think about the relationship between the son and the mother. And a lot of times, sons subconsciously try to replace their mother with their partner.
Hmm.
And if you get the first person that shows you attention, you're just settling. You're not even looking at your values. You're not looking at what's important to you. So then you get with this person and you just live this life, and it's like this is what life is.
Hmm.
And it's like you're not really exploring your likes, your dislikes, what type of person you want to be with. It's like you're just finding a replacement. And then essentially that man becomes the woman's son. And then she becomes unattracted to him, and then it's like a vicious cycle.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think the thing with that is that we see it on both ends, and it's both people are seeking that attention, wanting to be desired, wanting to be loved, wanting to be nurtured, and they just go to that first person, as you said, who gives them that, and then you see years down the line all these divorces, and it's like, yeah, because you really weren't getting what you needed from that person. They really weren't, satisfying like your emotional needs, but you just settled because it was like, oh, I have somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important thing, man or woman, your fulfillment and how you feel about yourself starts on the inside. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people in general, especially men, look for external things. Men are so
Mhm.
physical, and they are disconnected when it comes to their insides, their emotions, their internal world. And I feel like with that disconnection, everything is based off of the physical, so it's kind of superficial.
And so when we look at the emotional intelligence, what we notice is that women are usually more emotionally intelligent than what men are. But I think that also has to do with, if you look at the therapy space, when I look at like how heavy it is in terms of women going to therapy, it's because women do look inward. And so when something happens, they're like, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Those types of things. But when it comes to men and something happens, they do that the whole external thing, the same thing as you were saying. And it's like, oh, over there, that's wrong, that's wrong. They don't do that same internal thing. And so their whole world perspective is a lot of external things versus having that internal emotional connection. But again, nobody was ever taught how to deal with all those feelings that are inside.
Yeah, for sure, because it's easy to blame. It's easy to point the finger. And, then that comes to not taking accountability, which leads to being emotionally stunted.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes me think about when I think about like that internal regulation of our emotions, and that's one of the things that I always think about when they say men are the natural leaders, and I'm like, are they? Hold on, because are we talking about these explosive men, the ones who can't regulate their emotions? It's like, how are you going to lead if you cannot, regulate yourself? And what I think about is how many women, and I don't know if you're one of them, I'm one of them, complain about crying when they're angry,
Mm.
and they'll be like, I hate that I cry when I'm angry. It's like I get so angry and I want to kill somebody, but instead of killing somebody, I just cry. And it really frustrates me because it makes me look weak. But then men, they get angry and they do something stupid, right? They go break something, they attack something, they get violent, those types of things. Um, but what we see is that women were able to better regulate that emotion. And so they were able to say, I'm feeling this thing and I want to go do that, but the more appropriate response is to release these emotions through my tears.
It, it makes me think about how women are more connected to their bodies, and I don't think it's by choice. Like we naturally have a cycle, and all of that is controlled by the moon, and everything is affected. So women are naturally connected to their bodies. Like we can create life. So I think that's another disadvantage that men have. Men don't have a cycle every 30 days. They don't have something fluctuating their emotions or changing how they feel. So it's like as a woman, we have to figure it out. We have to learn how to ground ourselves. But with men, you know, they can just live their regular day to day and not worry about the fluctuations that we have to deal with every month.
Yeah. And in addition to that is like they're living there every single day, and it's because it's allowed, and so they can kind of go and live and say and do all the things that they want. But women are held to this different standard, and they're not allowed to do and say all the things that they want, or they become labeled as X, Y, and Z. There's so many names that we get labeled at because of that. And so I do think that men tend to get let off the hook in terms of sitting with their emotions. You don't have to just get mad, go punch something, and go on about your day. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's not the reaction that we need to have.
Yeah, for sure. Because everybody is responsible for their actions and behaviors, and it shouldn't change because you're a man or a woman.
Mhm.
Everybody's actions and behaviors, you should be held accountable based on just being human, just being a person.
And the thing is I hate to put any burden on any women, or to put us out there to take care of or do things for men. But I think that there is a lot that we can do to be able to make sure that men aren't as emotionally starved, and that they're able to kind of express their emotions. And it's something, simple as telling a man that you're proud of them, or getting them a flower, or being able to say, thank you, or I'm sorry, or things like that. And it can go a very long way, as long as that man is like receptive to those things and can take it and do something positive with it.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like that's a responsibility for women, because we're essentially a mirror. We have the masculine and feminine energy just like they do. So if we're able to tap into our feminine energy and have a good balance, all of the men in our lives, not just our sons or husbands, but all of the men in our lives, like it's part of our responsibility, and vice versa. It's men's responsibility. So since they have a little bit more of their masculine energy, once they're able to balance stuff, we can learn stuff from them as well. And if we're able to kind of work together and grow together instead of like all this resistance, I think the world would be like a much different place.
Hmm. And I think that that part of that resistance, it goes back to that messaging that men receive, that women are inferior. And so even when we are trying to guide them to that place of being able to express their emotions or use their words, or things like that, they push back against it. And so I also say that yes, as women can do stuff, but I think that the bigger impact is going to come from those men who understand how to regulate their emotions, how to express their emotions, being able to teach these other men how to do that too, being able to say, hey, try this or do this, and watch how it changes everything for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we definitely need the men, um, of the all the leaders to actually stand up. And I don't know where I was going with
The thing I think about with having the men or the leaders stand up is is this. I think this kind of goes back to my male bashing. It's like, do they actually know how to guide people in the way that they need to be guided? And so I think that a man can be like, I know how to do these things, and just tell somebody to do these things, but it's almost a manipulation game to get people to do things.
that.
It's like, do they have that skill set to manipulate their own?
Yeah, for sure. Do they have that good balance of masculine and feminine energy?
Mhm.
Because regardless of your gender, if your energies are off balance, it's not gonna be congruent. There's gonna be something that feels off about that person.
Mhm. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were talking about with men not being connected to themselves. And so they need to be able to connect with other people's energies and recognize, wait a minute, something's off about that. I'm not going to so much listen to what you're saying. Hold on. I like what you're saying. Something over here feels a little bit more comfortable.
Mhm.
And I think about it whenever I think about like how many like podcasts are out there. And it's like there's some good male led podcasts that are talking some good stuff. And then there's some horrible ones. And it's like, as a man, if you're sitting there and you're listening to both of these, it's like, what are you feeling in your body? What emotions are being brought up? Because I'm thinking, like, if you're listening to the bad ones and you're feeling angry or you're like, oh yeah, these women suck. If you're having that mentality, that's probably not the right energy. But
Yeah.
if this one over here is having you quiet or it's having you think a little bit, that's probably a better energy. So even though it's not exciting you because you don't feel like they're on your team, but it's not creating a negative emotion in you. So let's pay attention to what they're saying.
Yeah, and I think for men in general, if they find themselves getting riled up and angry about certain things, and maybe it's really just like an insecurity, checking in with their bodies. Like, does your chest feel tight? Are your ears hot? Is your jaw clenched? Why? You
Mhm.
know, pay attention to those signs and, you know, Google that feelings wheel and explore and identify what you're actually feeling. I think that's the first thing, just to kind of tie it up in a bow, like you said with your son, like identifying what emotion you're feeling. There's not just happy, sad, and mad. There's like hundreds of emotions. And I think if men are able to identify the emotion, it can lead them down to that path of, having more of a healthy outlet.
Yeah. And I think that's why whenever I really talk to people about their feelings, I want them to describe to me what they're feeling versus telling me how they're feeling. Because when people tell you how they feel, they'll just pick one of those happy, mad, sad type of things. But when they describe it, it's more like, I just can't sleep right now. I'm feeling um, all this crap going on in my body and I'm had this pressure at work. And it's like, I'm getting a lot better understanding of what you're feeling than if you were just say that you're mad. So
Mhm.
describe it to me. But that's also something that they have to be able to do within themselves when they're feeling that emotion. It's like, let me describe this emotion. I'm feeling my chest tightening up, and then it goes to like, okay, why is my chest tightening up? When are other times that my chest tightens up? But it goes back to taking responsibility and being able to look inward and being able to hold yourself accountable so that you are able to, become more emotionally balanced.
Yeah, and I think it definitely takes skill and practice, and that's something that as women, that's something we've been doing forever. But I think for a lot of men, it may be a little foreign, and it may be uncomfortable to kind of think about why your chest is tightening up. Like it's like I don't want to think about that.
Mhm.
I think that's just a natural reaction.
Yeah, and I think also with women, we have so many amazing female speakers, podcasters, writers who are teaching us these things and we're listening. And so they are guiding us through it. But I don't feel like there's enough men doing it. And so when men are looking for that example or somebody to listen to, they're not going to be listening to all these women. And so there needs to be more men out there who are empowering men in positive ways to check in with themselves to make sure that they're good. And of course, by checking in with themselves, they understand their needs. And when they understand their needs, they can tell the women in their life their needs. And then that's what the women can do. The women can help fulfill some of those needs.